So, we are here to discuss, are Bitcoiners becoming sycophants of the state? The answer seems clearly yes, but we're going to get into that.
You can't give it away. You can't give it away.
Let's start with you, Erik. And I'm really teeing you up here. What do you think of the state?
Fuck the state. Woo! Woo! Look, like the amount of dick sucking going on towards the political establishment that's going on here is shameful and disgusting. Bitcoin works without the state. We don't need an SBR. You can own Bitcoin today and exit from this fucked up establishment that's designed to steal from you and redistribute that money towards war and horror. If you don't want to have anything to do with it, buy Bitcoin, hold Bitcoin, use Bitcoin as your unit of accounting. You do not need the state. And again, I want to really emphasize this for the statists in the room. Fuck the state. You cannot have my money and use Bitcoin to defend yourself against the state from taking it.
I mean, there is no better way to open this panel. But Bruce, I want to kick it to you because you kind of went inside the belly of the beast. So tell me your perspective on this.
Yeah, the same. I mean, I was going to joke like it's our responsibility we were talking about, but I can't even joke about it because it's so ridiculous and disgusting. The state is a tool of violence. Fiat money is a tool of violence and immoral evil. Every single evil thing you can point to in the world, whether it's global war or for-profit prisons, or even obesity, it all tracks back to this stupid invention of the melting ice cube of fiat money. It's time to put it in the dustbin of history. It's immoral, it's wrong, it's violent, it's horrible. None of us should support it, and now we have an alternative to not support it.
Woo! Let's fucking go. Okay. Am I going to have anyone on the stage here that's going to disagree with any of this?
Oh, I love the state. No, just kidding. I mean, I think the title of this, "Are Bitcoiners Becoming Sycophants of the State?" is really interesting because I think a lot of the time Bitcoiners are sycophants of Bitcoin, right? They don't actually think super hard about it. Bitcoin becomes a sort of religion. And as we get, frankly, more and more normies, we get people who haven't thought really hard about how Bitcoin works and what that means. And also, of course, people who are already sycophants of the state before becoming Bitcoiners. And now they sort of are able to be sycophants of both somehow, even though these things are in conflict, right?
That's actually really interesting. That's like the changing dynamic of who Bitcoiners are. How do you think that's changed in like the last few years?
Oh, I mean, enormously. I mean, I remember, back when I initially got into Bitcoin, anybody who was into Bitcoin was weird for like one reason or another, right? They hated the state, they hated the government, they were like weird technical weirdos, you know what I mean? There was something like different. These days, and I think being into Bitcoin is great, it's awesome. I sort of view it as in the early days, these people were already a little bit weird. These days, Bitcoiners, a lot of time, Bitcoin is kind of getting its hooks into them, right? And that's maybe the thing that makes me optimistic about the topic of this panel is that, yes, some Bitcoiners are becoming sycophants of the state, and the state has this corrupting power, but Bitcoin also has this corrupting power. Bitcoin has incentives, corrupting in a good way, that it gets its hooks on you. Don't you want to earn some Bitcoin? Don't you want to spend some Bitcoin? Don't you want people to accept your Bitcoin? Don't you want the government to enact favorable laws that are favorable to your Bitcoin? So it's kind of this like mind virus in the same way that the state is a mind virus, but they're at odds with each other. And I'm optimistic that Bitcoin will win.
So, HODL, you're not normally the centrist on a panel.
I'm in the center of the panel, so
You are
I'll play centrist today.
Yeah, you play centrist because we spoke about this on the podcast yesterday.
Yeah. So here's the thing: is like there's a nuance in the term sycophant here. Like, are Bitcoiners sycophants of the state? I mean, maybe some of the dumbest amongst us are going down that path, but I think that Bitcoiners are attempting to use the state for their own benefit. But there is no world. I mean, listen, the surveillance panopticon has already been built. Whether you like it or not, it exists, and there is no place on Earth that you can hide from the state. Okay, you can't go into the mountains with your cold card. That's fucking retarded. You have to go through the state. And I think Bitcoiners make this cardinal sin of thinking that they are their Bitcoin. It's like, yeah, your Bitcoin is immutable. You are a meat puppet who lives on government land, and at any time they want, the US government can come into your home and kill you in your living room in front of your children. So never forget that fact, because that's the reality of your situation. And when somebody has a gun to your head, it behooves you to take them seriously.
I think that was a really balanced centrist take we just got there.
There you go. Here's the centrist. But in this, like when I got into Bitcoin, everyone talks about Bitcoin as freedom money. And I think that is slowly changing, and maybe that change is like accelerated, at least among some people. So like, do you think we'll lose Bitcoin as freedom money by moving into the state?
That's certainly the big risk, right? Is that there's a world in which Bitcoin gets ghettoized as a store of value, where basically Bitcoin is owned and controlled and co-opted by the powers that be, and it becomes like gold, and it's something that's very safe and amenable to the current power structure, and it allows the current regime to stay in power, and they use it as a, you know, sort of a way to maintain their position in the world, right? And so I think that we as Bitcoiners need to fight the good fight all the way through and make sure that the censorship-resistant properties don't get stripped in service of number go up, even though we are all aligned on number go up, and we want number go up because it makes our lives more prosperous. But if we get to the end of the rainbow without freedom, we actually gain literally nothing.
And Bruce, I'm interested in your perspective of this. As someone who's like tried their hand at politics and you've been in this kind of apparatus, like what did you learn from that?
My experience in politics, I ran for office, and it's one disappointing thing is that ideas don't matter. It's all just money. Politics. We live in a state worshiping society, and you hear people even at events like this, they're like, "Oh boy, the undersecretary of this and this elected official is here or there." Who cares? Do you run a node? Somebody asked me for the Satoshi Roundtable. They said, "Oh, do you have a special deal for government officials?" I say, "Yeah, double price." We should not be giving these people our energy. We're empowering them. They need us more than we need them. We should ignore them. We should refuse meetings with them. We do not need these people. They are violent extremists. We're not the crazy ones. They're the crazy ones. They're the crazy ones who sit in these fancy offices paid for with money they stole from us and claim the right to shoot us or whatever. They don't have any power over us. We've invented nerd money that they can't stop with all their tanks and all their violence, and we should tell them to, there's the door. And we should be the strong front for that and go back to the way that this space used to be, 10 years ago, where it was just unthinkable that these people would be welcomed into any of our meetings. We don't need them. We've made a better system precisely to make them, not relevant anymore. So we got to stop giving them any airtime at all and stop acting like they're important. It's just a bunch of violent thugs in stupid costumes claiming authority over us.
Fuck yeah.
Here. But then what do you think we should do? Like, are we meant to just completely ignore that this is reality, or should we be trying to push Bitcoiners into politics?
I'd like to ignore it. I was saying early on, I remember Ben Losky, early people in the, remember before Gensler, you had this Ben Losky, and people were like, "Oh, let's reach out to him." And I saved them all. I didn't want to embarrass too many people, but the who's who of the industry at the time were like, "Oh, great, we're getting clarity. We're reaching out to Ben Losky." No, screw this guy. He was a horrible guy. He invented the bit license, which was the predecessor to all these stupid regulations. We should have never, ever, ever met with him, never given him the time of day. Say, screw you. Get out of our face. You got one tool and only one tool. That's your thuggish use of guns and force. And if you want to come after us with your guns and your force because we're using math, bring it on. Otherwise, there's the door.
I love to have someone more fired up than Erik Cason on the panel. This is fucking great.
God damn, yeah. Like, thanks, Bruce. I fucking love you, man. But look, on that note, I feel very seriously look at how fucking powerful Bitcoiners have become as a political contingency. We literally swung the last presidential election. You have a number of people from the administration coming here to pander us. Guys, get off your fucking knees. It is time to stand up and become our own political contingency. We need an orange party that is about radical modernism in this country. Things are fucked up. There is nobody that we can elect that will get us out of the problems that we have made, and that's why we need a totally radical new solution, and Bitcoiners are the only people that have any thoughtful way to address it in any meaningful capacity. So instead of electing red or blue, it's time to elect people that are orange, who say, I'm not going to compromise myself with either the red side or the blue side because they're both just as criminal as the last administration. It's time to do something new, something radical, and something profound, and that's going to be the Orange Party.
That's interesting to hear you say, because I wouldn't have assumed you would want to put Bitcoiners into politics. So, like, what does the Orange
They
Party
don't
look like?
want politics. It's the emergency of what is happening right now, that if we don't solve this, we are going to be fucked. The dollar will be worthless. We will live inside of a technological panopticon where you are surveilled every single moment of every single day, and you'll have no idea whether or not that's being used against you. And it is an extreme danger that we all have to be aware of with central bank digital currencies. So I implore you, take very seriously the revolution that Bitcoin can implement, but it needs to be pushed forward by a grassroots level and a radical new political ideal that is about not choosing red or blue, not choosing the lowest common denominator and deciding to do something different.
So, HODL, Bitcoiners like to talk about the Trojan horse. Do you think the Orange Party might be in the Trojan horse in government now?
Yeah, I mean, if you want to say there's a couple different outcomes here. One is that you fight the state straight up. A lot of Bitcoiners spent a lot of time thinking that was the inevitable outcome and that you would have to martyr yourself against the state in order to win and see Bitcoin succeed. I don't think that's the path that we're on. I think we are more on the Trojan horse path, and you can see that Bitcoin is being adopted by the state. And they're doing that because our power is rising, their power is waning, and they're doing it to maintain control. It's the same way like the Roman state became the Holy Roman Empire, when they subsumed Christianity for their own benefit, right? So like these patterns repeat over time. And I think that we are in a type of Trojan horse because the only way out is through, in my opinion. And, I agree with Erik, like we should have our own party and we shouldn't be beholden to this bipartisan like bullshit, which is just, you in America, you can change parties, but you can never change policies. Like we get the same horrible fucking policies every single time, no matter who's in office. And so if we did have something like an Orange Party, I think it would be fantastic. I think one thing Bitcoiners need to learn about being inside a Trojan horse is that sometimes it's good to shut the fuck up when you're in the Trojan horse.
We're not doing a very good job of that right now.
No.
I actually think that the Trojan horse analogy is a good one, and there's a lot of opportunities, I believe, to actually capture the state and capture state actors with the incentives of Bitcoin. So if I was a political person, which honestly I'm not because it just is gross and it takes time and it takes energy and it's stressful, but I would be looking at ways to capture government entities, figure out how to get them to use Bitcoin in a way that would align their incentives with Bitcoin. I don't know if I would give politicians money because that seems like a pretty fraught path. But if I did, I would want to give them Bitcoin and sort of force them to hold Bitcoin for longer periods of time. Like the same way that power corrupts, money can corrupt, and maybe we can use that to our own ends to, even not in direct opposition to the state, just slowly capture all the individuals. And then we wake up one day and they're all like, yeah, I hold Bitcoin and I use Bitcoin. Like, why would I ever vote against it?
I think maybe we should take a step back. Casey, this one's for you. I want to know, like, what's at stake here? How can Bitcoin be captured by the state?
Oh, I mean, I think we're entering an incredibly weird period. I've always thought that there would come a period where Bitcoin becomes relevant in a geopolitical way. It gets large enough that it actually, people who are in power, entities, agencies, people start to take notice of Bitcoin. I always knew that was coming, and I think that we're entering a tremendously powerful but also very risky period. I sort of liken it to the war on drugs. Like the war on drugs in America was not successful, but it did make it very, very unpleasant to be a drug user, to get drugs, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So even though I think ultimately the government can't destroy Bitcoin, I think that the government could make it very, very, very unpleasant to be a Bitcoiner. And if there was sort of a global, if the heads of state all over the world and agencies all over the world realized what a threat Bitcoin was to their power and for once acted in a globally coordinated way, they could make it very unpleasant to be a Bitcoiner. They could drive Bitcoin underground. They could make it illegal to hold, to transfer. And I think that Bitcoin has that might not happen because they're often irrational and they don't act in a coordinated way. And Bitcoin does have a good chance of resisting that. But I think that a lot of people underestimate how unpleasant the government could make it. And they assume that Bitcoin will win. It's a fait accompli, when in fact it isn't, right? We need to face those challenges as they occur, and I think they could be quite nasty. I mean, after all, the government, they are the ones with the money printer and the guns and the thugs, and we should take that quite seriously.
Erik, you gave me a sly smile there. Is there something you wanted to add to that?
I totally agree with Casey, and I think we are entering into a very dangerous period, and I think people need to be very thoughtful about the exact way that we're going to approach this. And like, that's why I'm a fan of this idea of the Orange Party, because I do think all of this politicizes at some point. And I think an Orange Party is the only way that it maintains a radical, truly third-party political ideal. And I think as much as it integrates with one of the two parties, it becomes something pretty dangerous. And furthermore, like, captured KYC Bitcoin that needs rails to be able to operate on the traditional AML KYC financial system, like, that's not Bitcoin. That's this weird amalgamated thing that's designed to destroy the components of Bitcoin. And the great news is that like Bitcoin totally operates right now as it can without that system needing to be in place. So like we're in a good standing, but people need to understand the difference between Bitcoin on Coinbase and Bitcoin that they keep in their own private wallet.
So just to play devil's advocate for a minute, incentives matter. And so is there not an argument that we should absolutely speed run like the strategic Bitcoin reserve and these other things that are being pushed? Does that not make our incentives align with them? And maybe HODL, you can take this one.
I mean, yeah, listen, it makes our incentives more aligned with them. Again, I think you can't, you and your Bitcoin are different. Like Casey said, they can make your life absolute hell. I think there is a big difference. Like, listen, there's a big difference between the Trump administration and the Kamala Harris administration. Completely different for the next 4 years for our life. Now, like maybe like the big game theory here doesn't change or swing on every election, but certainly like there are paths forward that are much worse for us. And as Bitcoiners, like there are levels of survival we're prepared to endure, but like I don't necessarily want to endure those levels of survival, you know? So I think it's a tightrope act to make sure that you don't lose your soul on the way to, you know, endless riches and other things.
I actually, just to add, I do think that Bitcoin reserves by states are probably good in the long run because I do think we want Bitcoin to monetize. We want Bitcoin to become not just an option on a store of value, but a store of value itself. And a lot of that just means increased liquidity, increased like long-term holding of Bitcoin. So I certainly don't like the idea of governments getting rich on Bitcoin like entirely, but I do think it's probably mostly a good thing, right? It does get Bitcoin to that like next level of like geopolitical importance, like very seriously, this is a reserve asset. I mean, it'd be great if the banks were like, oh no, we can't do anything to hurt the value of Bitcoin because then like we're fucked, balance of trade, blah, 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 blah.
Well, and this is an interesting position I have, is like I think like United States like California or New Hampshire and like regional governments should hold Bitcoin. Federal government's absolutely not. And I actually think like this is one of the key counterpowers that regional and local governments can use against federal entities to like get them under control. And so like I'm a huge proponent of state and autonomous rights for things that are under federal administration. And I think that's where Bitcoin could do the most powerful stuff.
But Bitcoin's money for enemies. Like, who's to say we should try and stop the state from doing this?
Well, we literally can't stop the state from doing this. I mean, we can't even stop people from putting ordinals on chain. No offense, Casey. No, just but no, I mean, we have no ability to stop people from using an open permissionless network in whichever way they want to use an open permissionless network, right? So like there is no, it's a bit of self-importance for us to sit here and be like, should we allow the state to do this? You know, they're going to do it no matter what.
So, I mean, that is true, but at the same time, do we not have like a moral impetus to at least stand up and have these conversations?
Absolutely. I actually just that's the first time I've heard the idea that we should get the local governments and the states to adopt Bitcoin, but not the federal government. I think that's a fucking phenomenal idea. I fucking love that. And maybe that is actually something that could guide our strategy, which is like, okay, you know, there are large powers and there are small powers, and we think the large powers are generally, you know, by and large worse, scarier, right? So how can we strategically use Bitcoin to, as money for enemies, incentivize and make more powerful these small actors in a strategic way, right? So that they can then create a little bit more competition for government, a little bit more distribution of power, right? We might like to, you know, tear down the state and the federal government, but if we're thinking about which one we like and how do we feel about it, I think most Bitcoiners would be like, yeah, we'd probably like the state to have more power and the federal government to have way less power. So I think that's a fabulous strategy.
So I'm all in on the fuck the state idea. But Bruce, I've got a question for you, which is like, obviously we've gone from the Biden administration, which was very anti-Bitcoin, to a Trump administration that is at least like seemingly pro-Bitcoin. They're allowing businesses to like thrive in the US. Is that not a step forward?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely a step forward. It's good. I think the difference with being like a sycophant is you know, this worshiping of the state. I view the state as like any other no coiner, you know, like your friend on Facebook who's like, oh, I should have listened to you 10 years ago. Maybe in 2035 I will. You know, it's like, all right, if they buy it, great. If they don't, they don't. You know, I mean, to HODL's point, it's like, you know, certainly there is a difference between, you know, this cackling commie Kamala, who would have, you know, wanted everybody in this room locked up in a cage if she had her way, versus Trump, who is more pro-freedom. And, you know, that's a big difference. We don't want to necessarily fight these fights, but it's also not our, you know, we can do our own thing. We've invented better money. And, you know, if somebody wants to use Zimbabwe money or they want to use gold, you know, or whatever, like that's their business. We've made our better money. We can keep going down our own path using better money and be free of all the tyrant money and everything bad that comes with it.
So one of the things I'm most nervous about for this panel is the fact that we have plenty of politicians here in the room, and I don't want to give them ideas. But Erik, maybe we'll start with you. I'd like a few of your opinion on this, but like, we've had David Sachs here. I don't know if he's been on stage yet. JD Vance was on stage this morning. Like, what would your message to these people be?
You could just not do the things you're doing. You know, like what you're doing is actually immoral and bad. Like you hurt people. You like actively want to use the state to implement violence against others. That's like fucked up and wrong. Like if you like personally want to like go to Yemen and like try to stab those people, that like that's on you. But like asking other people to go do that, it's just like a fucked up and terrible thing. And like, why do you want to like look at all my personal pictures and stuff with like these emergency acts? And also just like, fuck you. You're not like a king. You know, like you're supposed to be liable to the law too. And like, I don't appreciate you trying to think that you just get to kind of advance the state however the fuck you want because you have power. So I guess my message is like, fuck you and leave me alone.
Bruce, I've got to go to you there. I want your message too.
My message to the politicians would be the same thing that I said to my little kids when they were 5 years old, which is, you know, don't hurt people. It's not moral to hurt people unless it's in defense or they hurt you. Duh. Like, that's it. And all your bullshit goes out the window if you follow that simple rule. All your AML, KYC, all your stupid forms, all your idea of putting people in cages over victimless crimes, it's out the window if you follow the simple thing that any 5-year-old should know, which is that you don't have a moral right to point a gun in somebody's face. You don't have a right to steal somebody's money, to hire somebody else to point a gun in somebody's face because you have some invisible, you know, social contract that nobody's ever seen and nobody's ever signed. Screw you. Get out of our business. Leave us alone. And be peaceful. Just be cool. Be cool. You know, do things that you teach a little kid to do, and you'll find yourself a lot more moral. And you'll find yourself that 99% of these laws are not moral. They have no place in a civilized society. And we've got to remember that these people don't have a right to lecture us. They are the violent thugs who killed, you know, hundreds of millions of people over the last century. They have nothing on us. All we want to do is run some code and trade around our nerd money. Leave us alone.
Fuck yeah.
Let's go. HODL, when we were talking about this on the podcast yesterday, you obviously had a slightly different opinion. Where do you think Bitcoin is going to fall in this? Like, do you think these people are just here pandering to us, or do you think they are truly starting to like open their eyes to Bitcoin and understand what this thing is?
You know, personally, like, I don't really care what they think. They are employees who work for us. So their thoughts and opinions on the matter are irrelevant. Do what the fuck we tell you to do. I don't work for you. I'm not underneath you. You're underneath me. You know what I mean? So it's like the state is a weapon. It's for sale. And Bitcoiners are the highest bidders. Period.
Let's fucking go. All right, Casey, close out. Let's tell everyone here why Bitcoin wins regardless of what happens.
Oh man, I don't know if Bitcoin wins regardless of what happens. I think that depends on the future. I think that depends on what Bitcoiners do, how the state organizes, what the response is. I mean, if we all of a sudden saw a very rapid inflation in a lot of fiat currencies, and there was a plausible scapegoat in Bitcoin, you know, all over the world, and they were able to make a sort of, you know, this marketing claim that Bitcoin is causing this, right? Bitcoin is making your savings go to zero. It's causing this carnage in the economy. If that happened worldwide, I think that's really scary. I take that seriously. You know, I don't know that Bitcoin will succeed. I think Bitcoin is incredibly strong. It's incredibly difficult to fuck up. But in that case, like, man, I don't know. Especially with, you can just DDoS core developers by spinning up LLMs and making like dumbass arguments on GitHub. So I don't know. If Bitcoin succeeds, it's going to be because of people, and it's going to be because of how we react to the challenges of the future.
Well, I don't think there's a better way to end this panel. Thank you to all the panelists. Give them a big round of applause.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.